What if I told you that the difference between those who struggle through life and those who seem to effortlessly win at everything isn't talent, luck, or even hard work? What if the real secret is something far more subtle, yet infinitely more powerful? The truth is, while most people react to life, a small elite group of individuals think strategically. They don't just respond to challenges. They anticipate them. They don't just solve problems. They prevent them. They don't just adapt to change. They create it. Strategic thinking is the ultimate meta skill. It's the ability to see patterns where others see chaos, to find opportunity where others see obstacles, and to position yourself for victory before the game even begins. This isn't just about business or competition. This is about mastering the art of living itself. Whether you're navigating career challenges, building relationships, making financial decisions, or pursuing personal goals, strategic thinking gives you an unfair advantage. But here's what most people don't understand about strategic thinking. It's not some mystical gift that only generals and CEOs possess. It's a learnable system of mental models, frameworks, and principles that anyone can master. The problem is, nobody teaches you this in school. You're expected to figure it out on your own, and most people never do. Today, that changes. By the end of this audiobook, you'll think differently. You'll see the world through the lens of strategy, spotting opportunities and threats that others miss entirely. You'll develop the ability to think several moves ahead, to position yourself advantageously, and to turn any challenge into a stepping stone toward your goals. Most importantly, you'll learn to play the game of life like a grandmaster plays chess, with intention, foresight, and precision. Chapter 1. The Strategic Mindset Revolution. Most people live their lives in reactive mode. They wake up, respond to whatever demands immediate attention, put out fires, and go to bed exhausted, wondering why they never seem to get ahead. They're constantly playing defense. Always one step behind, perpetually, caught off guard by circumstances they should have seen coming. This is the default mode of human existence, and it's exactly why most people never achieve their true potential. Strategic thinkers operate from a fundamentally different paradigm. They understand that life is not a series of random events happening to them, but a complex system of cause and effect that can be influenced, directed, and leveraged. They see patterns where others see chaos. They identify leverage points where small actions can create massive results. They think in systems, not just events. The strategic mindset begins with a crucial realization that your current position in life is not permanent. Every situation you find yourself in, whether good or bad, is temporary and changeable. The question isn't whether your circumstances will change, but whether you'll be the one directing that change, or simply reacting to it. Strategic thinkers choose to be the authors of their own story, rather than passive characters in someone else's narrative. One of the most powerful aspects of strategic thinking is the ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture, while simultaneously drilling down into crucial details. Most people get trapped in one of two extremes. They either get so caught up in day-to-day minutiae that they lose sight of their long-term direction, or they think so abstractly about the future that they fail to take concrete action in the present. Strategic thinkers master the art of moving fluidly between these different levels of thinking. The strategic mindset also involves understanding that everything is connected. Your career decisions affect your relationships. Your health choices impact your productivity. Your financial habits influence your opportunities. Strategic thinkers don't compartmentalize their lives into separate, unrelated areas. They understand that life is an integrated system where changes in one area create ripple effects throughout everything else. Perhaps most importantly, strategic thinking requires you to develop what military strategists call situational awareness. This is the ability to accurately perceive and understand your environment, the forces at play, and how they're likely to evolve. Most people operate with tunnel vision, focusing only on what's directly in front of them. Strategic thinkers constantly scan their environment for signals, trends, and emerging patterns that others miss. This level of awareness extends to understanding your own strengths, weaknesses, motivations, and blind spots. You cannot develop an effective strategy without brutal honesty about your current capabilities and limitations. This isn't about self-criticism. It's about accurate self-assessment that allows you to position yourself advantageously and make decisions that align with your actual abilities, rather than your wishful thinking. The strategic mindset also embraces paradox and complexity, rather than seeking simple answers to complex problems. While most people want straightforward solutions and clear-cut choices, strategic thinkers understand that the most powerful approaches often involve holding multiple perspectives simultaneously, finding creative ways to turn apparent contradictions into complementary forces. Strategic thinkers also develop a sophisticated relationship with time. They understand that different actions have different time horizons. For impact, some moves pay off immediately. Others take years to mature. They learn to balance short-term necessities with long-term positioning, never sacrificing their future for momentary gains, but also never becoming so focused on the future that they neglect present realities. Finally, the strategic mindset requires emotional regulation and the ability to think clearly under pressure. When most people face stress, uncertainty, or crisis, their thinking becomes reactive and narrow. Strategic thinkers train themselves to remain calm and clear-headed, precisely when everyone else is losing their composure. This gives them a massive advantage, because they can see opportunities and solutions that stressed minds miss. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Strategic Intelligence. Strategic intelligence isn't about being smart in the traditional sense. Some of the most academically brilliant people struggle with strategic thinking because they've been trained to find the one right answer to well-defined problems. Real life doesn't work that way. Strategic intelligence is about developing the cognitive tools to navigate ambiguity, uncertainty, and complexity while making decisions with incomplete information. The foundation of strategic intelligence is pattern recognition. Everything in life follows patterns. From market cycles to human behavior to technological adoption curves, most people notice patterns only after they've fully played out, by which time the opportunity has passed. Strategic thinkers train themselves to spot emerging patterns while they're still forming, giving them the ability to position themselves advantageously before others even realize what's happening. Pattern recognition requires you to consume information differently than most people. Instead of just reading for content, you read for underlying structures. Instead of just observing events, you look for the forces that create those events. Instead of just noting what happened, you ask why it happened when it did, and what conditions made it possible. The second pillar of strategic intelligence is systems thinking. This is the ability to see how different parts of a system interact with each other, how changes in one area create cascading effects elsewhere, and how the whole system behaves in ways that can't be predicted by looking at individual components. Most people think linearly, assuming that causes and effects are directly connected, and proportional strategic thinkers understand that small changes can have massive effects, that effects can precede causes, and that the most powerful interventions often happen at points that seem unrelated to the desired outcome. Systems thinking also involves understanding feedback loops, both positive and negative. Positive feedback loops amplify changes, creating exponential growth or decline. Negative feedback loops create stability and resistance to change. Strategic thinkers learn to identify these loops and leverage them, rather than fighting against them. They understand that trying to force change against strong, negative feedback loops is usually futile, while finding ways to trigger positive feedback loops can create dramatic results with minimal effort. The third component of strategic intelligence is scenario planning. This involves developing the ability to think through multiple possible futures and prepare for various contingencies. Most people have a single mental model of how things will unfold, which leaves them unprepared when reality doesn't match their expectations. Strategic thinkers develop multiple scenarios, from best case to worst case, and create flexible plans that can adapt to different outcomes. Scenario planning isn't about predicting the future, which is impossible. It's about expanding your mental models so you can recognize emerging situations more quickly and respond more effectively when you've already thought through how you would handle various scenarios. You can act decisively while others are still trying to figure out what's happening. Strategic intelligence also requires developing what psychologists call counterfactual thinking. This is the ability to consider how things might have been different if various factors had changed. Most people accept outcomes as inevitable once they've occurred. Strategic thinkers constantly ask what else could have happened and what factors were most influential in determining the actual outcome. This helps them understand causation more accurately and make better predictions about future situations. Another crucial aspect of strategic intelligence is the ability to think at multiple time horizons simultaneously. Every decision you make has immediate consequences, medium-term implications, and long-term effects. Most people focus primarily on immediate outcomes, occasionally considering medium-term effects, and rarely thinking seriously about long-term consequences. Strategic thinkers evaluate every decision across all 3 time horizons and look for choices that optimize across all of them. This temporal thinking extends to understanding that different strategies are appropriate for different phases of any endeavor. The strategies that work when you're starting something new are different from those that work when you're scaling, which are different from those that work when you're maintaining and optimizing. Strategic thinkers adapt their approach based on what phase they're in, rather than rigidly sticking to one way of operating. Strategic intelligence also involves developing metacognitive awareness, which is the ability to think about your own thinking. This means being aware of your mental models, recognizing when they might be limiting you, and deliberately seeking out perspectives that challenge your assumptions. Most people are unconscious of their own thinking patterns, and therefore trapped by them. Strategic thinkers make their mental processes visible to themselves, so they can consciously improve them. Finally, strategic intelligence requires emotional intelligence, particularly the ability to understand how emotions affect decision-making, both in yourself and others. Emotions aren't the enemy of good strategy. They're crucial information about values, motivations, and priorities. But emotions can also cloud judgment and lead to poor decisions. Strategic thinkers learn to acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them, and to factor emotional dynamics into their strategic calculations. The 7 laws of strategic advantage. There are fundamental principles that govern how strategic advantage is created, maintained, and lost. These laws operate whether you're aware of them or not, but understanding them consciously gives you the power to work with them, rather than against them. Master these 7 laws, and you'll have a framework for creating advantage in any situation. The first law is the law of positioning. Your position determines your options, and your options determine your outcomes. Most people focus on execution while neglecting positioning, which is like trying to win a race from the wrong starting line. Strategic positioning means putting yourself in situations where good outcomes are probable and bad outcomes are unlikely, where you have multiple options while your competitors have few, and where you can leverage your strengths while minimizing your weaknesses. Positioning isn't just about where you are, it's about how you're perceived. Sometimes, the best position is to be underestimated by your competition. Sometimes it's to be seen as indispensable by your allies. Sometimes it's to be viewed as unpredictable by those who might otherwise try to manipulate you. Strategic thinkers understand that perception is reality in human interactions, and they consciously shape how others see them to create strategic advantage. The second law is the law of timing. The same action can succeed brilliantly or fail completely, depending on when it's taken. Most people either act too early, before conditions are favorable, or too late after the opportunity has passed. Strategic timing requires understanding cycles, recognizing inflection points, and having the patience to wait for the right moment, combined with the decisiveness to act when that moment arrives. Timing also involves understanding that different stakeholders operate on different time cycles. What seems urgent to you might be irrelevant to someone operating on a longer time horizon. What seems like a long-term investment to you might feel impossibly slow to someone who needs immediate results. Strategic thinkers align their timing with the natural rhythms of the systems they're operating within, rather than imposing their own preferred timeline. The third law is the law of concentration. Success comes from focusing your resources on the points where they can create the maximum impact. Most people spread their efforts too thinly, trying to do everything at once and achieving excellence at nothing. Strategic concentration means identifying the crucial few activities that will drive the majority of your results and ruthlessly eliminating or minimizing everything else. This law extends beyond just time and energy to include attention, relationships, and opportunities. You cannot pay meaningful attention to everything, so you must choose what deserves your focus. You cannot maintain deep relationships with everyone, so you must invest in the connections that matter most. You cannot pursue every opportunity, so you must select the ones that align with your strategic direction. The fourth law is the law of leverage. Small, well-placed efforts can create massive results when they're applied at the right points in a system. Most people try to succeed through brute force, working harder rather than working smarter. Strategic leverage means finding the fulcrum points where minimal input creates maximum output, whether that's through technology, relationships, systems, or positioning. Leverage often comes from understanding how different forces multiply each other. Your knowledge becomes more valuable when combined with the right relationships. Your relationships become more powerful when backed by relevant skills. Your skills become more impactful when applied in the right context. Strategic thinkers look for combinations that create exponential rather than additive effects. The fifth law is the law of adaptation. The environment is constantly changing, and strategies that worked in the past will not necessarily work in the future. Most people resist change and try to force their old approaches to work in new circumstances. Strategic adaptation means constantly sensing changes in your environment and adjusting your approach while maintaining your core objectives. Adaptation requires balancing stability and flexibility. You need enough consistency to build momentum and develop expertise, but enough flexibility to respond to changing conditions. This balance point is different for every situation and every person, and finding it requires ongoing experimentation and adjustment. The sixth law is the law of information asymmetry. Having better information than others gives you a significant advantage, but information is only valuable if you can act on it faster than others can acquire it. Most people either ignore information gathering entirely or get lost in analysis paralysis. Strategic information advantage comes from developing superior sources, processing information more effectively, and acting on insights before they become common knowledge. Information asymmetry also involves understanding what information others have and how they're likely to use it. Sometimes, the most valuable insight is recognizing what your competitors don't know or are misinterpreting. Sometimes, it's understanding the biases that cause others to misread situations. That you can see clearly. The seventh law is the law of optionality. Having multiple options is more valuable than having one perfect plan. Most people create detailed plans and then try to execute them exactly as designed, which leaves them vulnerable when circumstances change. Strategic optionality means creating approaches that preserve your ability to choose between multiple paths as more information becomes available. This involves making investments that open up possibilities rather than closing them down, maintaining relationships across different groups rather than committing exclusively to one, and developing capabilities that are valuable in multiple scenarios rather than optimizing for a single outcome. Strategic thinkers understand that flexibility has value, even when it comes at the cost of some efficiency. These 7 laws work together synergistically. Good positioning creates better timing opportunities. Proper timing enables effective concentration. Concentration amplifies leverage. Leverage facilitates adaptation. Adaptation generates information advantages. Information creates more options. And optionality improves positioning. Understanding these interconnections allows you to create strategies that are greater than the sum of their parts. Chapter 4. Reading the Invisible Game. Every situation you encounter is like an iceberg. What you see on the surface is only a small fraction of what's actually happening. Beneath the visible layer are hidden agendas, unspoken power dynamics, historical contexts, psychological patterns, and systemic forces that are often more important than the obvious elements everyone focuses on. Learning to read these invisible dimensions is what separates strategic thinkers from reactive responders. The first invisible layer is understanding the real motivations of the people involved. What people say they want and what they actually want are often completely different things. Someone might claim they want efficiency, but what they really want is control. Someone might say they want collaboration, but what they really want is validation. Someone might argue for a particular solution, but what they really want is to prove they're right. Reading motivations requires paying attention to patterns of behavior rather than isolated statements. Watch what people consistently do, not just what they occasionally say. Notice what energizes them and what drains them. Observe how they respond to different types of challenges and opportunities. Look for the underlying needs they're trying to meet through their actions, even when those actions seem irrational on the surface. The second invisible layer is power dynamics. Every group, organization, and relationship has informal power structures that are often more important than the official hierarchy. Understanding who really makes decisions, who influences the decision-makers, who has veto power, and who serves as connectors between different factions is crucial for effective strategy. Power isn't just about formal authority. It can come from expertise, relationships, information, resources, or simply the ability to create problems for others. Sometimes, the most powerful person in a room is the one who seems to have the least formal status, but whom everyone else depends on for something crucial. Strategic thinkers map these informal power networks and position themselves advantageously within them. The third invisible layer is historical context. Every current situation is shaped by events that happened before you arrived, decisions that were made years ago, relationships that were formed or broken in the past, and patterns that have been established over time. Understanding this history helps you avoid repeating others' mistakes and capitalize on opportunities that others miss, because they don't understand how the current situation evolved. Historical context also includes understanding the life cycle stage of whatever system you're dealing with. Is this organization in startup mode, growth mode, maturity mode, or decline mode? Is this relationship in its honeymoon phase, working phase, or crisis phase? Is this market emerging, maturing, or fragmenting? Different strategies work better at different stages, and trying to apply growth stage strategies to mature systems usually backfires. The fourth invisible layer is cultural dynamics. Every group develops its own culture, which includes unwritten rules about how things really work. What behaviors are rewarded or punished, what topics can be discussed openly, and what must remain underground. These cultural patterns often override formal policies and procedures. Culture manifests in language patterns, ritual behaviors, status, symbols, and shared stories about what succeeds and what fails. Strategic thinkers learn to decode these cultural signals and work within cultural constraints, rather than fighting against them. They understand that trying to implement strategies that violate deep cultural patterns is usually futile, no matter how logical those strategies might seem. The fifth invisible layer is psychological patterns. Individuals and groups have predictable psychological tendencies that influence how they perceive information. make decisions, and respond to different situations. Understanding these patterns allows you to predict behavior and design your approach accordingly. Some people are naturally cautious and need extensive proof before making decisions. Others are impulsive and make quick judgments based on limited information. Some people are motivated by competition and respond well to challenges. Others are motivated by collaboration and respond better to partnership approaches. Some people think concretely and need specific details. Others think abstractly and prefer big-picture frameworks. The sixth invisible layer is